I spent my last $500 on my grandmother's heart medication, while my family offered nothing but judgment. 3 weeks later, she told me she did not need money, but rather to know who was still human. She then revealed a lottery ticket worth $333 million. However, the true horror was not the money. It was exactly what my relatives did the second they realized she was wealthy. My name is Zoe Cooper. I am 32 years old. And if there is one thing I have learned working as a senior copywriter at North Shore Creative Lab, it is that people will do absolutely anything to avoid an uncomfortable truth. At North Shore, we package corporate disasters into palatable press releases. We take a chemical spill and call it an environmental recalibration. We take a massive layoff and brand it as a strategic streamlining for future agility. I am good at my job because I know how to spin a narrative. I know how to take the ugly and paint it beige until nobody notices the rot underneath. But nothing prepared me for the masterclass in spin that my own family performed last Tuesday. It was 2 p.m. I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room in the city, half listening to a 20-year-old intern explain why our client's new soda campaign needed more authentic joy, when my phone vibrated against the mahogany table. It was not a work email. It was a notification from The Hive, which is what my mother, Diane, christened our extended family group chat 3 years ago. She thought the name suggested a busy, productive community working together. In reality, it was just a swarm of insects buzzing loudly and occasionally stinging the weakest member. The weakest member, according to them, was my grandmother, Eleanor Briggs. We called her Ellie. I slid the phone into my lap, keeping my face neutral for the client. The message preview froze my blood. It was a screenshot forwarded by my mother, followed by a text that read, "Just had to do this for my own mental health. Boundaries are so important. Everyone." I opened the image. It was a screenshot of her contact list. Beside the name Mom, there was a new gray icon, the block symbol. My mother had blocked her own mother. I felt a cold flush of nausea rise in my throat. I excused myself from the meeting, ignoring the glare of my creative director, and walked straight into the ladies' restroom. I locked myself in the farthest stall and scrolled up to see what had precipitated this nuclear option. 10 minutes earlier, Grandma Ellie had sent a message to the group. It was typed with the clumsy, endearing spacing of someone whose fingers are stiff with arthritis and who treats a smartphone screen like a delicate piece of glass. "Hello, everyone. I hate to ask. The pharmacy says the price of the heart medicine has gone up again. I am short $200 for this month. The check does not come for another week. If anyone could help, I will pay back on the 1st. Love, Mom." That was it. A plea for $200. In a family where my mother drove a leased Lexus and my Aunt Marla had just renovated her kitchen with Italian marble, $200 was a dinner bill. It was a pair of shoes. It was nothing. But in The Hive, it was apparently an act of war. I watched the responses roll in real time. Standing there in the fluorescent hum of the office bathroom, it was a fascinating, horrifying study in deflection. First came Uncle Jerry, my mother's older brother. "Mom, you really need to look into generic brands. The markup on name brands is a scam. Have you called the insurance company? You have to be aggressive with them. Advice, free, useless advice." Then came my cousin Cole, Marla's son, who was currently finding himself in a loft downtown that his parents paid for. "Grandma, maybe cut back on the cable TV, streaming is way cheaper. I can send you a link to a budgeting app." He sent a link. He actually sent a link to a budgeting app to a 78-year-old woman who reused aluminum foil and washed out Ziploc bags. Then, the silence, the heavy pregnant pause where you know people are reading the message, seeing the need, and actively deciding to do nothing. I waited for my mother to step in. I waited for her to say, "I got it, Mom." Instead, she sent the screenshot showing she had blocked her. And then she typed a follow-up message to the group, excluding Grandma. "I cannot deal with the guilt tripping anymore. Every month it is something. The heater, the water bill, now the pills. It is toxic. I am blocking her for 48 hours to teach her that we are not ATMs. I suggest you all do the same so she learns to manage her assets better." My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream. Manage her assets. Grandma Ellie's assets were a 2-bedroom house in a declining neighborhood and a Social Security check that barely covered the property tax. She had spent 40 years working double shifts at a diner to put Diane and Marla through college. She had decimated her savings 10 years ago to help Uncle Jerry avoid bankruptcy. I was typing a furious response, something scorched earth that would probably get me kicked out of the family when Aunt Marla entered the chat. Marla, the youngest, the one Grandma Ellie had spoiled the most. Marla wrote, "Honestly, Diane is right. It is enabling. And let's be real for a second. At that age, does she really need to be on that many medications? It seems like we are just prolonging the inevitable at a high cost. The air left the bathroom stall. I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend that a human being had actually typed those words about her own mother. Prolonging the inevitable. She was talking about my grandmother's life as if it were a subscription service that was no longer providing value for money. I waited. Surely, someone would object. Surely my mother, who posted quotes about kindness and karma on Facebook every morning, would tell her sister that she had crossed a line. Nothing. A thumbs-up emoji from Uncle Jerry, a heart emoji from my mother. They agreed. They actually agreed. It was not just about the money, it was a consensus. They had decided, collectively, that Eleanor Briggs had outlived her utility. She was now just a line item in their emotional budget that they wanted to cut. I did not scream. I did not throw my phone. Instead, a cold, hard instinct took over. It was the same instinct that made me good at my job. Document everything. I took a screenshot of Marla's comment. I took a screenshot of my mother's admission that she blocked Grandma. I took a screenshot of Jerry's refusal and Cole's budgeting app link. I saved them all to a secure folder on my cloud drive named Receipts. I did not intervene in the chat. I knew if I said anything, they would turn on me. They would call me dramatic. They would say I did not understand the complexity of the situation. They would gaslight me until I doubted my own eyes. So I stayed silent in the digital world. But in the real world, I was already moving. I exited the bathroom and walked back to my desk. I sat down and opened my banking app. The number on the screen stared back at me, mocking and cruel. Available balance. $512.42. My stomach twisted. It was the 24th of the month. My rent, which was $2,000, was due on the 1st. I had been eating instant oatmeal for dinner for 2 weeks to save up. I was waiting on a freelance check that was already 5 days late. If I spent this money, I was not just broke. I was in danger. I was looking at an eviction notice. I was looking at late fees I could not afford. I looked at the phone again. A new message had popped up, but not in the group chat. It was a direct text from Grandma Ellie. She must have realized nobody was replying in the group, or maybe she sensed the icy silence. Zoe, honey, I am sorry I asked in the group. I did not mean to cause trouble. I know everyone is busy with their own lives. Aunt Marla is right. I should budget better. Forget I asked. I will cut the pills in half this month and make them last. I will handle it. Love you. She will cut the pills in half. The doctor had been very clear 3 months ago when I took her to the cardiologist. If she misses a dose, or if she underdoses, the risk of a stroke increases by 60%. She needs this specific medication. Ellie, not the generic, because of her allergies. Cut them in half. She was willing to gamble with her life to avoid annoying the people she gave life to. I looked around the office. People were typing, laughing, drinking $6 lattes. The world kept turning. My mother was probably at her Pilates class right now, feeling righteous about her boundaries. Marla was probably looking at tile samples. I closed my eyes. I thought about the time I was 7 years old, sitting on Grandma's porch while my parents argued inside. Grandma had brought me a cup of hot cocoa and told me, Zoe, never let the world make you hard. You keep that soft heart. It is the strongest thing you have. She had saved me 1,000 times in small, quiet ways. And now, for the price of a pair of designer sneakers, my family was willing to let her heart stop beating. I knew what I had to do. It was reckless. It was financially suicidal. It was the only thing that made sense. I opened the pharmacy app on my phone. I had her prescription details saved from the last time I picked them up. I did not just select the 1-month supply. I selected the 90-day supply. If I was going to be broke, I might as well be thoroughly broke. And I did not want her to have to ask these vultures for anything for at least a season. The total came to $489.50. I stared at the confirm order button. If I pressed this, I had $22 to my name. I would have to walk to work because I could not afford the subway. I would have to negotiate with my landlord, who was a man with eyes like shark skin and zero patience. I would be eating nothing but the free bananas in the office break room for a week. I thought of Marla's text again. At that age, does she really need to be on that many medications? My finger hovered. Rage is a powerful fuel. It burns cleaner than gasoline. I was not doing this just because I loved my grandmother. I was doing it because I hated them. I hated their comfort. I hated their selective amnesia. I hated that they could sleep at night while she counted pennies in the dark. I pressed, Place order. Processing payment. Approved. My bank balance updated instantly, $22.92. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The transaction was done. The courier would deliver the medicine to her door by 6 in the evening today. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Grandma Ellie. I did not tell her I spent my last dime. I did not want her to feel guilty. That was the weapon my mother used, and I refused to pick it up. Grandma, do not cut the pills. I just spoke to a friend who had a coupon. It is taken care of. 3 months' supply is arriving tonight. You do not owe anyone anything. Please take the full dose. I watched the 3 little dots appear as she typed back. Oh, Zoe. You did not have to. Thank you. I will pay you back when the pension comes. I promise. You are a good girl. I do not know what I would do without you. I put the phone down on the desk. The office lights seemed brighter, harsher. I felt lightheaded, probably from the adrenaline and the lack of a proper lunch. I was broke. I was terrified. But for the first time in years, I did not feel dirty. I felt clean. I opened the group chat one last time. The conversation had moved on. They were now discussing a potluck dinner for next Sunday. Marla was asking if she should bring her famous quinoa salad. My mother was coordinating the wine. They were planning a family gathering while ignoring the matriarch of the family. I wanted to type, I just bought the meds. I used my rent money. You are all monsters. But I didn't. Strategy. Zoe. Strategy. If I told them I paid, they would not feel shame. They would feel relief. They would say, oh, great. Zoe handled it, and they would wash their hands of the guilt. They would think the problem was solved. I did not want them to feel relief. I wanted them to feel nothing until they felt everything. I took one more screenshot of their potluck planning. I saved it right next to Marla's death wish text. I whispered to the empty air of the office. Enjoy the quinoa, Marla. I had $500 less in my pocket, but I had something far more valuable. I had clarity. I saw them. I finally, truly saw them. And once you see the rot in the foundation, you do not try to paint over it. You wait for the house to collapse. If they looked at my grandmother and saw a burden, I would make sure that by the time this was over, they would understand that a burden is sometimes just a mirror. And when you look into a mirror, you cannot run from the ugly thing staring back at you. I went back to work. I wrote 3 press releases about corporate synergy. I smiled at the intern, but under the desk, my leg was bouncing. I was ready. I did not know what was coming, but I knew that the balance had shifted. I had drawn a line in the sand with my last $500. They just didn't know it yet. To understand why I emptied my bank account without hesitation, you have to understand the geography of my childhood. It was not mapped out in miles or city blocks, but in zones of unwantedness. My mother, Diane, had me when she was barely 19 years old. I was the result of a summer romance that ended before the leaves turned brown. For the first few years, we were a package deal, living in the spare bedroom of my grandmother's house. But then, when I was 6, Diane met Graham. Graham was an architect. Graham drove a sedan that smelled like new leather. Graham had a 5-year plan that included a sprawling house in a newly developed subdivision called Oak Creek, 40 minutes away. The plan included Diane. It included the possibility of new children. It did not explicitly exclude me, but the math was subtle. The new house had 3 bedrooms, a master, a guest room that doubled as an office, and a nursery. There was no room for a 6-year-old girl who came with the baggage of a previous life. I remember the day they moved. The conversation was hushed, disguised as a temporary arrangement, just until we get settled. Zoe, the schools here are better anyway. Grandma needs company. The temporary arrangement lasted 26 years. I did not grow up with a mother and father. I grew up with Ellie, while Diane was building a picture-perfect life in the suburbs, hosting book clubs and planning ski trips. Ellie was raising me on a waitress's wage and sheer grit. Ellie was not like the grandmothers on television who baked cookies and knitted sweaters. She was a warrior in an apron. She worked the breakfast and lunch shift at a diner called the Silver Spoon, coming home smelling of hash browns and cheap coffee. She had veins on her legs that looked like blue lightning, a testament to 40 years of standing on concrete floors. She was a woman of few words but immense action. She never told me she loved me. She showed it by waking up at 5 in the morning to iron my school uniform because she knew I was embarrassed about it being secondhand. She showed it by putting an extra scoop of ice cream in my bowl even when she skipped dessert herself. In that drafty little house with the peeling yellow paint, I never felt poor. I felt chosen. But every other weekend, when I was driven to the suburbs to visit my real family, I learned exactly where I stood in the hierarchy. The visits were a performance. I was the prop Diane used to show her friends that she was a modern, blended family success story, but the reality was in the details. When Diane and Graham had their own children, my half-siblings, twins named Brady and Sarah, the divide became a canyon. I watched from the sidelines as they got the brand new bicycles, the private tutors, and the trips to Europe. I was not jealous of the things. I was jealous of the visibility. They were seen. I was tolerated. The holidays were the worst. I vividly remember Thanksgiving when I was 16. I had just gotten straight A's on my report card, a feat I achieved by studying at the diner counter while waiting for Ellie's shift to end. I wanted to tell Diane. I wanted her to look at me with the same shine in her eyes that she had when Brady learned to tie his shoes. We arrived at the Oak Creek house. It was immaculate, smelling of sage and roasting turkey. The dining room table was set with fine china and crystal glasses for the adults. There were 8 seats: Diane, Graham, Graham's parents, Marla, her husband, and 2 neighbors. "Zoe, honey," Diane said, barely looking up from the centerpiece she was arranging. "You are at the kids' table in the kitchen with the twins and Cole." I was 16. Cole was 12. The twins were 8. I sat on a hard wooden stool in the kitchen, eating off a paper plate because Diane did not want us to break the good china. Listening to the muffled laughter from the dining room, I could hear Graham proposing a toast to family and prosperity. That was the night I realized I was not a daughter to them. I was a distant relative they were obligated to feed twice a year. Aunt Marla was the architect of my insecurity. If Diane was neglectful, Marla was surgical. She had a talent for what I call conditional kindness. She would smile, that tight, bright smile that never reached her eyes, and say things that sounded like compliments but felt like cuts. "Zoe, you look so healthy," she would say, her eyes scanning my thrift store jeans. "It is good to see you are eating well. I know groceries can be expensive." Or, "It is so brave of you to apply to the state university. Not everyone needs the pressure of an Ivy League education. You will fit in much better there." She always spoke to me as if I were a charity case that had gone slightly wrong. She loved to bring up my father, a man neither of us knew, implying that my existence was a mistake that everyone was graciously overlooking. One afternoon, when I was 18 and preparing to leave for college on a scholarship I had fought tooth and nail to get, Marla came by Grandma's house. She looked around the living room, her nose wrinkling slightly at the scent of old paper and dust. "You know, Zoe," she said, touching my arm with a manicured hand, "you really should be grateful to your mother. It was hard for her. Having you so young, it really set her back. Most women would have given up. We all had to pitch in to help handle the situation." I was the situation. I was the setback. I went to the backyard, where Ellie was hanging laundry on the line. I was crying. Silent. Hot tears that burned my face. Ellie saw me. She did not ask what happened. She knew Marla. She knew Diane. She simply unpinned a wet sheet, threw it in the basket, and walked over to me. She took my face in her rough, calloused hands. Her thumbs wiped away the tears. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low and fierce like a growl. "You do not need their permission to belong. You belong to yourself, and you belong to the people who show up. Do you understand blood is just biology? Love is showing up." She straightened my collar. "Now, stand up straight. If you slouch, you are bowing to them. Never bow." That advice became my spine. I went to college. I worked 3 jobs. I graduated with honors. I moved to the city and clawed my way into a marketing firm where people with trust funds usually got the best desks. I did it all to prove that the situation was a success. But beneath the ambition, there was always fear. A gnawing, cold dread that lived in the pit of my stomach. I knew Ellie was getting older. The woman who once carried trays with 10 plates on one arm was beginning to slow down. I noticed it in the small things. The way she would pause at the bottom of the stairs to catch her breath. The way her handwriting, once looped and elegant, had become jagged and shaky. The way she turned up the volume on the television until the walls vibrated. I tried to talk to Diane about it. "Mom, I think Grandma needs to see a specialist. Her heart rate seems irregular." Diane would wave a hand, dismissing me as if I were a fly. "Oh, Zoe, stop being dramatic. She is just aging. It happens to everyone. Besides, she says she is fine." Of course she said she was fine. Ellie would claim she was fine if she were on fire, just so nobody would have to put down their drink to fetch a bucket of water. She had been trained by her own children to be invisible. They only noticed her when they needed something: a babysitter, a loan, a signature. If she needed something, she became a nuisance. In the last 6 months, the decline had accelerated. I saw the tremors in her hands when she tried to hold a teacup. I saw the way she winced when she stood up. But whenever I asked, she would force a smile that looked more like a grimace and say, "Just a little rust in the gears. Honey, nothing to worry about." She was hiding it. She was terrified that if she showed weakness, they would do exactly what Cole had suggested in the group chat, put her away. To my family, a nursing home was not a place of care. It was a storage unit for a human being they no longer wanted to deal with. I realized then that the dynamic of my childhood had shifted. When I was young, I was the one they ignored, the one they left at the kids' table, the one they forgot to include in the family portrait. But I had youth on my side. I could leave. I could build a life. Ellie could not leave. They were doing to her what they had done to me. They were slowly, systematically erasing her. They were training themselves to live without her while she was still breathing. They stopped calling. They stopped visiting. They stopped asking how she was. They reduced her to a contact in a phone that they could block when the notifications became inconvenient. When I looked at my bank account before buying those pills, I did not just see numbers. I saw the only shield standing between my grandmother and total erasure. I was the only witness left to her life. If I did not step in, the situation would resolve itself exactly how Marla and Diane wanted, quietly, cheaply, and without disturbing their brunch plans. The silence in that group chat was not just an absence of words. It was the sound of a family deciding that someone had lost their value. And I knew, with a clarity that cut through decades of gaslighting, that if I let them discard her, I would lose the only person who had ever made me feel like I had a right to exist. So I bought the time. I bought the pills. I bought the dignity they were trying to steal. But as I sat in my office, hungry and broke, I realized that the battle had only just begun. They thought they were dealing with the quiet, grateful girl who sat at the kids' table. They had no idea that the girl had grown up, and she had been taking notes for 20 years. The realization that you have been amputated from your own family does not always happen with a scream or a slam of a door. Sometimes, it happens with the soft, digital ping of a social media notification. 2 days after I spent my rent money on Grandma Ellie's heart medication, I was sitting at my desk at North Shore Creative Lab, eating a sandwich I had brought from home because I could no longer afford the cafeteria salad. I was scrolling through Instagram, trying to disconnect my brain for 10 minutes, when I saw it. It was a photo posted by my cousin Sarah, the twin sister of Brady. The caption read, "So blessed to celebrate my engagement with my absolute favorite people. Family is everything." She said yes. Inner circle. I stopped chewing. The photo was professional quality. It was taken at a vineyard estate about an hour north of the city, a place known for $50 appetizers and wait lists that stretched into next season. In the frame, arranged in a perfect semicircle of beige linen and pastel silk, was the entire clan. There was my mother, Diane, holding a champagne flute and laughing with her head thrown back. There was Graham, looking fatherly and proud. There was Aunt Marla, wearing a dress that cost more than my car, with her hand resting affectionately on Sarah's shoulder. Uncle Jerry was there, Cousin Cole was there, even some of the second cousins from out of state were there. There were only 2 people missing from the frame, me and Grandma Ellie. I zoomed in on the photo. I looked for a gap, a space where perhaps we should have been. There was none. The composition was tight, complete, and intentional. They did not look like they were missing anyone. They looked relieved. I felt a strange, cold pressure in my chest. It was not surprise. It was the confirmation of a suspicion I had harbored for months but had been too cowardly to articulate. There was a shadow family tree, a pruned version where the dead wood had been hacked away. I texted Sarah. I kept it light, feigning ignorance, giving them one last chance to lie to me. "Congrats on the engagement. The photos look amazing. When was this?" The reply came 3 hours later. "Thanks, Zoe. It was just a spur-of-the-moment brunch last Sunday. We didn't want to bother you. Mom said you were swamped with that big campaign launch, and we know how stressed you get. We missed you, though." The lie was so smooth it was almost elegant. "We didn't want to bother you. It is the polite veneer of exclusion. It frames their rejection as an act of consideration. They were not leaving me out. They were protecting my schedule." I did not reply. I knew exactly what spur-of-the-moment meant at a vineyard that required reservations 6 weeks in advance. It meant they had a group chat, a separate one without the obligations, one without the granddaughter who worked too much, and the grandmother who needed too much. I drove to Ellie's house that evening. I had to see her. I had to know if she knew. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller than usual. The siding was graying, and the hydrangeas out front were drooping, thirsty for water. I found Ellie in the kitchen, sitting at the small round table where I had done my homework for 12 years. She was staring at her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. She looked up when I entered, and her smile was instant, reflexive. It was the smile she used to armor herself against the world. "Zoe, what a nice surprise. I was just about to make tea. Do you want some Earl Grey?" I sat down across from her. I saw the phone screen before she could lock it. It was Facebook. She was looking at the same photos. She was looking at her daughter and her grandchildren, toasting to a future she was not invited to witness. "I saw the pictures," I said quietly. Ellie's hand trembled slightly as she put the phone face down on the table. She smoothed the tablecloth, focusing intently on a non-existent wrinkle. "Oh, those," she said, her voice airy and thin. "Yes, Marla mentioned they might go out for a bite. It looks lovely. Sarah looks very happy." "Grandma," I said, reaching for her hand. Her skin felt like dry parchment paper. "They didn't tell you." "They probably thought I couldn't make the drive," she said, pulling her hand away gently to adjust the sugar bowl. "You know how my hip gets in the car, and it was a young people's party. Who wants an old lady slowing down the fun? It is fine, Zoe, really. It is fine. It was not fine." I watched her as she got up to fill the kettle. Her movements were heavy. It was not just age, it was the weight of invisibility. She was shrinking. I could see it happening in real time. The light in her eyes, which used to be fierce and stubborn, was thinning out, like watercolor paint diluted with too much water. Over the next 2 weeks, I made a decision. If they were going to ghost her, I was going to anchor her. I started showing up every other day. I stopped waiting for invitations that would never come. I brought groceries. I brought potting soil. I brought a new light bulb for the porch. We spent the evenings doing the small, domestic things that bind people together. We planted a row of winter vegetables in the backyard, her fingers guiding mine as we tucked the seeds into the earth. I cooked dinner, simple things like roast chicken and mashed potatoes, and we ate at the table, talking about everything and nothing. I asked her about her life before I was born. I asked about the grandfather I never met, who died in a factory accident when Diane was a baby. I asked about her time working at the diner. I made her tell me the stories she thought nobody wanted to hear. "You know," she said one evening, laughing as she recounted how she once spilled a milkshake on the mayor. "Nobody has asked me that in 20 years. "I am asking," I said, but despite the laughter, the shadow remained. Every time her phone buzzed, she would jump, hoping it was one of them. It never was. It was usually a telemarketer or a weather alert. The silence from the inner circle was deafening. One Tuesday, I came over to find her sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a knitted shawl, staring at the fence line where the paint was peeling. The sun was setting, casting long, melancholy shadows across the yard. She did not hear me open the sliding door. "Grandma?" I asked softly. She did not turn around. She just spoke to the air, her voice so low I almost missed it. "I feel like I'm disappearing. Zoe," I froze. "What do you mean?" She turned to look at me, and the raw vulnerability in her face broke my heart. "I am still here. I am breathing. I eat breakfast. I watch the news. But to them, it is like I am already gone. I feel like a ghost haunting my own family. They look right through me. Do you know what that feels like? To wonder if you actually exist because nobody reflects you back." She rubbed her chest, right over her heart. "It hurts more than the angina. Being forgotten is a physical pain." That was the breaking point. The passive observation phase was over. I excused myself, walked to the front yard, and dialed my mother's number. It rang 4 times. She answered with a breathless, distracted tone. "Zoe, is everything okay? I am just about to head into a yoga session." "Why wasn't Grandma invited to the engagement party?" I asked. No pleasantries, no preamble. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the muffled sound of a studio in the background, the soft chime of meditation music. "Oh, Zoe, honestly," Diane sighed. "Are we really doing this now?" "Yes, we are doing this now. Why?" "It is complicated," she said. The universal catchphrase of the coward. "How is it complicated?" "Mom. She is your mother. She lives 40 minutes away. She would have worn her Sunday best and sat quietly in the corner and been thrilled just to see you." "You don't understand," Diane's voice sharpened. "It is not just about the distance. It is look. Mom can be difficult. She has needs. She asks questions. She makes people uncomfortable with her health issues. We wanted Sarah's day to be perfect. We didn't want to have to worry about whether Mom was too hot or too cold, or if she took her pills. It changes the vibe. The vibe, I repeated, tasting the bile in my mouth. So, her existence ruins your aesthetic. You are twisting my words, Diane snapped. We love her. But we have to have boundaries. We can't drag her everywhere. It is better for her to stay home where she is comfortable. We are doing her a favor. Really? And the group chat? I asked. The one without us, is that a favor too? Silence. Cold, thick silence. We just needed a place to plan logistics without cluttering everyone's phones, she said, her voice tight. You are being paranoid. Look, I have to go. My class is starting. Tell Mom we send our love. She hung up. Tell Mom we send our love. They sent love like it was a digital greeting card, effortless, mass-produced, and utterly worthless. I stood there in the driveway, gripping my phone until my knuckles turned white. I understood now. Complicated was code for convenient. They wanted a family that looked good in photos, not one that required care. They wanted the highlight reel, not the behind-the-scenes footage. Grandma Ellie was messy. She was old. She was a reminder of mortality and obligation, and those things did not pair well with bottomless mimosas. I looked back at the house. The kitchen light was on, casting a warm yellow glow through the window. Inside, there was a woman who had given everything she had to these people, and they had reduced her to a nuisance. But as I looked at that small, sturdy house, I felt a shift in the air. It was the heavy, static-charged atmosphere that precedes a thunderstorm. I went back inside. Ellie was still on the porch, but she had stood up. She was looking at me with a question in her eyes. I did not tell her what Diane said. I would not let those words touch her. They are just busy, I lied, hating myself for it, but knowing the truth would kill her faster than any heart condition. But I am not. I am hungry. Let's make pancakes. She smiled, a weak, grateful thing. Breakfast for dinner. That sounds nice. We went into the kitchen. I whisked the batter. She heated the pan. The house felt warm. It felt lived in, and it felt safe. But as I flipped the first pancake, I looked at my grandmother and I knew something was coming. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. You cannot create this much of a void without something rushing in to fill it. They had pushed us out of their circle. They had drawn a line. They had no idea that by isolating us, they had not trapped us on the outside. They had trapped themselves, and standing there, listening to the sizzle of butter in the pan. I had a premonition. The silence from the family was not the end of the story. It was the deep breath before the scream. The drive to Grandma Ellie's house that Friday felt different. Usually, the 40-minute commute from the city to the older suburbs was a time for me to decompress, to listen to a podcast, or to just stare at the bumper in front of me. But today, the passenger seat was occupied by a white paper bag stapled shut with a receipt that made my stomach turn every time I glanced at it. Inside that bag was 3 months' worth of beta blockers and blood thinners. The total cost was $489.50. My bank account balance was now sitting at $22 and change. I had enough gas in the tank to get there and back, and maybe enough food in my pantry to last 3 days if I got creative with rice and beans, but the fear of poverty was distant compared to the immediate, crushing weight of the anger I was carrying. I pulled into her driveway. Her house was the only one on the block with the lights off at 7 in the evening. She was saving electricity. I let myself in with the spare key. The house was cold. She had the thermostat set to 62 degrees. I found her in the living room, wrapped in 2 blankets, watching a game show with the volume low. Zoe. She squinted, reaching for her glasses. Is that you? You did not say you were coming. I am here, I said, dropping my purse on the sofa and holding up the white bag. And I brought supplies. I walked to the kitchen, flipped on the light, and started unpacking the bag on the Formica table. I lined up the amber bottles, 3 of one kind, 3 of another. It looked like a small pharmacy. Ellie shuffled into the kitchen behind me. When she saw the bottles, she stopped dead. Her hand flew to her mouth. Zoe, she whispered, her voice trembling. What did you do? I filled the prescription. Grandma, the full 90 days. You do not have to cut pills. You do not have to skip days. You take them exactly as the doctor said. She moved to the table and picked up the receipt I had carelessly left next to the bag. She read the number, $489. She dropped the paper as if it burned her fingers. No, she said, shaking her head violently. No, absolutely not. You take these back. You return them. I cannot accept this. I know what you make. Zoe, I know you have rent. You cannot spend $500 on an old woman who is halfway out the door. I cannot return prescription medication. Grandma, it is against the law. I lied. I honestly did not know if it was the law, but I needed her to stop. You need this money, she cried, and I saw tears welling in her eyes. It was not gratitude, it was shame. She was ashamed that her survival was costing me my security. I grabbed her shoulders. They felt thin, like bird bones under her heavy sweater. Stop it, I said, my voice firm. Look at me. Do not apologize. Do not you dare apologize for wanting to live. You are not a car that costs too much to repair. You are my grandmother. She collapsed into one of the kitchen chairs, burying her face in her hands. I am a burden. That is all I am now. A bill that keeps coming due. I pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. The air in the kitchen was freezing, but my blood was boiling hot. Grandma, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I want you to think really hard. When was the last time Mom, or Aunt Marla, or anyone in that group chat actually helped you? I mean, really helped. Not sent a text, not gave advice. When did they sacrifice something for you? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and looked at the ceiling, searching her memory. The silence stretched out, long and painful. Well, she hesitated. Marla brought me some food after Thanksgiving. What food? I pressed. You know, the leftovers, the turkey carcass for soup, some mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole nobody ate. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that had no humor in it. Leftovers. They gave you their garbage, Grandma. They gave you the things they were going to throw away, and they called it charity. I pulled out my phone. I had not checked the family group chat since the budgeting app incident, but I needed to see if the rot had spread. I opened the app. There were 40 new messages. I scrolled through them. It was mostly chatter about the upcoming potluck, but then, buried in the middle, was a message from Cole, my 24-year-old cousin who had never worked a hard day in his life. Guys, I was thinking, Cole had typed, if Grandma is struggling this much with bills and meds, maybe it is time to look into state facilities. I found this place. Shady Acres. It is state subsidized, so it would not cost the family anything. It is basically a dorm for seniors. Efficient. It would take the pressure off Mom and Aunt Diane. Efficient. Take the pressure off. What is it? Ellie asked, watching my face darken. I looked at her. I decided she deserved the truth. Treating her like a child was what they did. I would treat her like an adult. Cole thinks you should go into a home, I said. A state-run facility. He says it would be more efficient for the family. Ellie did not gasp. She did not cry. She just went very still. She looked down at her hands, her fingers tracing the grain of the wooden table. I see, she said softly. So that is where we are. That is where they are, I corrected. Not us. It feels like, she started, then stopped. She took a deep breath. It feels like what I want does not matter anymore. I worked for 50 years. I bought this house. I raised 2 daughters. But now, my opinion on where I sleep or what I eat is less important than their convenience. I am just a problem to be solved. You are not going to a home, I said, and you are not cutting pills. I stood up and walked over to the counter where she kept her mail pile. It was a chaotic stack of envelopes, electric bills, water bills, solicitations. I started sorting through them. What are you doing? She asked. I am taking over, I said. I am setting up autopay for everything, the electric, the water, the pharmacy. I am linking it to my account. No, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Zoe, I forbid it. You cannot pay my bills. I have my pension. It is small. But if I am careful, if you are careful, you freeze, I snapped, pointing at the thermostat. If you are careful, you skip heart medication. That is not living. Grandma, that is slowly dying. I will not be a leech, she argued, her voice gaining some of the old fire. I have never taken money from my children, and I will not take it from my granddaughter. It is not charity, I said, softening my tone. It is management. Look, I will set it up. We will sit down once a month. I will show you every single transaction. You will see exactly where the money goes. If your pension covers it, great. If it does not, I cover the gap. I am not taking your independence. I am just taking the fear away. I want you to be able to breathe. Grandma, Just breathe. She looked at the pile of bills, then at the bottles of medicine, and finally at me. Her shoulders sagged. The fight went out of her, replaced by a profound exhaustion. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but we write it down. Every penny. I will pay you back. I do not know how, but I will. Deal, I said. I spent the next hour on her iPad, navigating the clunky websites of the utility companies. I entered my banking information. I watched my projected balance for the next month dip into the negative, but I shoved the panic down. I would pick up freelance work. I would sell my designer purse. I would figure it out. Just as I clicked confirm on the water bill, my phone rang. The screen flashed Mom. I stared at it for a second. The timing was impeccable. They always sensed when the status quo was being disturbed. I answered on speakerphone so I could keep typing. Hello, Mom? Zoe. Diane's voice was crisp, tight. I just got off the phone with Marla. She said you called her earlier. Something about the engagement party. I called you, I said. But sure, Marla too. That is not the point, Diane cut in. The point is, Marla heard from the pharmacist. Apparently, the pharmacist is a friend of hers. Small world. They mentioned that Eleanor's granddaughter came in and paid a fortune for a 3-month supply of brand-name drugs. I stopped typing. The invasion of privacy was breathtaking, but not surprising. And frankly, Zoe, it is embarrassing, Diane said. You are making a scene. You swooping in like some savior, spending money you probably do not have, just to make a point. It makes the rest of us look like we are neglecting her. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, hot and acidic. You are neglecting her, Mom. That is not a look. That is a fact. We are managing her, Diane shouted. I had never heard her lose her cool like this. We are trying to get her to be realistic by buying her all those drugs. You are just enabling her stubbornness. You are undermining the family strategy. We were trying to get her to see that maybe she cannot afford to live in that house anymore. If she sees the reality of her bills, she might agree to the facility Cole found. But no, you have to play the hero. I looked at Ellie. She was sitting at the table, her head bowed, listening to every word. She heard her own daughter call her survival stubbornness. She heard her life described as a strategy. Did you hear that? I asked Diane, my voice deadly quiet. You admitted it. You were starving her out. You were letting her go without medicine to force her into a state home. That is not what I said. Diane backpedaled, her voice faltering. I said we need her to face reality. Here is reality, I said. I paid for the pills. I am paying the electric bill so she does not freeze tonight. I am paying for the water. I am doing the job that you and Marla are too selfish to do. You are making us look bad, Diane screeched. Do you know what people will think if they find out the granddaughter has to pay for everything while the successful daughters do nothing? It is humiliating. Then help her, I challenged. Send me $500 right now. Split the cost. If you want the credit, pay the bill. I will not be manipulated by you, Diane hissed. You are toxic, Zoe. You always have been. You create drama where there shouldn't be any. I am going to hang up now, I said. Grandma and I are having dinner. And Mom, if you are worried about looking bad, do not worry. You do not look bad because I helped. You look bad because you didn't. I tapped the red button to end the call. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not empty. It was the silence of a truth finally landing. Ellie looked up. Her eyes were dry now. The sadness was gone, replaced by something harder. Something resembling steel. She called it a strategy, Ellie said. Her voice was steady. My life? It is a strategy to them. Yes, I said. It is. Ellie reached out and took one of the amber bottles. She held it up to the light. Well, she said, if they want a war, they should have made sure I was unarmed. But now, thanks to you, I have my heart pills. She opened the bottle, took out a pill, and swallowed it dry. Let's order a pizza, Zoe, she said. With everything on it, I think I'm done being careful. I looked at her, really looked at her. The frail old woman was still there. But something else had woken up. I had used my last dollars to buy her time, but I think I had bought her something else too. I had bought her the permission to stop being a mother to people who only saw her as a liability. I ordered the pizza. I checked my bank account. $14 left. I was broke. I was alienated from my family. I was tired. But as I sat there in the warming kitchen, listening to my grandmother hum a low, angry tune, I knew I had made the best investment of my life. 3 weeks after I depleted my savings account to keep my grandmother's heart beating, my phone rang at 11:14 on a rainy Tuesday night. I was awake, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, calculating how many days of instant ramen I had left before I needed to brave the grocery store. The glowing screen illuminated the dark room, and when I saw Grandma Ellie flashing on the display, my stomach dropped through the mattress and hit the floor. Late-night calls from the elderly are never good news. They are the grim reapers of peace. They mean falls. They mean chest pains. They mean the confused, terrified realization that the stove was left on. I answered on the first ring, already swinging my legs out of bed, hunting for my jeans with one hand. "Grandma, are you okay? Did you fall?" My voice was thick with sleep and panic. "Zoe," her voice stopped me. It was not the weak, breathy whisper I had become accustomed to over the last year. It was not the apologetic mumble of a woman who felt she was taking up too much space. It was vibrating. It sounded tight, high-pitched, like a violin string stretched to its absolute limit before snapping. "Zoe, I need you to come over, now. I am on my way," I said, hopping on one foot as I pulled on a sneaker. "Is it your heart? Did you take the evening pill? Should I call 911? "No ambulances," she said, and there was a strange, wet sound in her voice. Was she crying, or was she laughing? It was a hysterical bubbling sound that I could not place. "Just you. Do not tell your mother. Do not tell anyone. Just drive. Please." She hung up. I drove the 40 minutes in 30. The rain was sheeting down, turning the highway into a blurred slick of oil and neon lights. My mind was racing through a catalog of disasters. Had she been scammed? I had read about those predatory calls where they convince seniors they owe the government thousands in back taxes. Had she given someone her bank details? Or worse, had the loneliness finally cracked her? Had she done something drastic? I gripped the steering wheel until my fingers ached. Please let her be okay. I cannot fix anything else. I have $14 and a maxed-out credit card. I cannot fix a disaster. When I turned onto her street, I expected to see the house dark, or perhaps the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Instead, I saw a beacon. Every single light in Ellie's house was on. The porch light, the living room lamps, the kitchen fluorescent, even the upstairs bedroom light, in a neighborhood of sleeping, shadowed houses. Hers looked like a cruise ship in the middle of a black ocean. This was the woman who, 3 weeks ago, sat in the dark to save 40 cents on the electric bill. I parked the car crookedly in the driveway and ran through the rain to the front door. I did not bother knocking. I jammed my key into the lock and threw the door open. "Grandma," I shouted, dripping water onto the entryway rug. "I am here. What is wrong?" She was standing in the archway between the hall and the living room. I froze. She was not wearing her faded flannel nightgown. She was wearing her blue Sunday dress, the one with the lace collar she saved for Easter and weddings. She had put on her pearl earrings. Her hair was brushed and pinned back neatly, and on the coffee table, there was a vase of fresh, white lilies, expensive ones, the kind you buy from a florist, not the grocery store. "Grandma," I breathed, checking her pupils from across the room. "What is happening? Why are you dressed up?" She smiled. It was a smile I had never seen on her face before. It was not the polite smile of a grandmother. It was the mischievous, terrified, electric smile of a girl who had just gotten away with something massive. "Close the door, Zoe," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands, clasped in front of her, were shaking. "Lock it, and pull the blinds." I did as she asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Grandma, you are scaring me. Is someone after you? Did you sign something? Come sit down," she commanded, gesturing to the sofa, on the coffee table, next to the lilies. She had set out the good tea set, the Royal Albert china with the pink roses that we were forbidden to touch when I was a child. There was a plate of Walker's shortbread cookies, the expensive tin I knew she only bought at Christmas. I sat down on the edge of the cushion, too wired to lean back. "Grandma, please, talk to me. Is this about the house? Did the bank call?" She poured tea into 2 fragile cups. The steam rose up, smelling of bergamot. She took a sip, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "Zoe," she began, setting the cup down with a deliberate clink. "Do you remember 3 months ago, when I went to the gas station to buy milk because Marla said she was coming over for coffee and I was out?" "I think so," I said, confused by the detour. "She never showed up, right?" "Right. She canceled 10 minutes before because it was raining and she did not want to get her hair wet, But I was already there, and the clerk, a nice boy named David, he was telling me about the jackpot. He said it was a record. He said, "Ellie, you should buy a ticket, just for luck." I felt a cold dread wash over me. Oh no, please do not tell me she gambled away her pension. "I never buy lottery tickets," she continued, her eyes glistening. "I think they are a tax on desperation. But that day, I was so angry at Marla. I was standing there holding a gallon of milk I did not need, feeling like a fool. So I threw a $20 bill on the counter. I told the machine to pick the numbers. I put the ticket in my wallet, behind the picture of you and me at the beach." She paused, taking a breath that seemed to rattle in her chest. "I forgot about it, Zoe. I completely forgot. It sat there, next to my pharmacy card and my library card, for weeks. Then, 2 days ago, I was cleaning out my purse because I was looking for a coupon for the soup." "Grandma," I interrupted, leaning forward, my voice gentle but firm. "Did you check the numbers? Did you win something? Look, these things can be tricky. Sometimes it looks like you won, but it is just a scam to get you to call a premium number, or maybe you won $500. That would be great. We could pay the heating bill." She looked at me, and suddenly, the suppression broke. A laugh escaped her, a jagged, tearful sound. "Zoe, honey, it is not $500. She reached under the sofa cushion and pulled out a large, cream-colored envelope. It was not a piece of junk mail. It was heavy, textured, official stationery. It had the seal of a major law firm embossed in gold on the corner. She slid it across the table toward me. "I did not just check the numbers," she whispered. "I hired a lawyer, a specialist. I took a taxi into the city yesterday while you were at work. I did not want to tell you until the ink was dry, until I knew it was real." My hands were trembling as I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, like it contained lead. I opened it. Inside was a letter of verification from the State Lottery Commission, attached to a legal breakdown from a firm called Holloway Partners. I scanned the words. Claimant Eleanor J. Briggs. Draw date. August 14th. Jackpot verification. My eyes skipped to the bottom, to the bolded line that summarized the payout options. Option A. Annuity payments over 30 years. Option B. Lump sum cash payment. Next to option B. There was a figure. $333 million. I stopped breathing. The room spun. The floral pattern on the armchair seemed to warp and twist. I blinked, sure that my eyes were failing, sure that the stress had finally caused a stroke. I looked again. $3,000, $1,000. I looked at the number, then at the cookies, then at my grandmother's pearls. "This is a typo," I stammered. "This is a joke. Is this a prank show? Where are the cameras?" "It is not a joke," Ellie said softly. "The money will be wired to a holding trust on Friday morning. The lawyer, Mr. Holloway, said it is the largest unclaimed ticket in the state's history. I nearly threw it away. Zoe, I nearly threw it in the trash with a Kleenex." I sat back, the letter fluttering from my hand to the floor. I felt nauseous. It was too much. The gap between my reality $14 in the bank, eating oatmeal for dinner, and this piece of paper was too wide for my brain to bridge. $333 million. It was not just money. It was a nation. It was a weapon. "You are rich," I whispered. "You are richer than God." "We are rich," she corrected. But then, a thought struck me. A sharp, jagged shard of memory that pierced through the fog of shock. I sat up straight. I looked at the date on the letter. The verification was dated 3 days ago, but she said she found the ticket 2 days ago. No, wait, she said she bought it 3 months ago. I looked at her. "Grandma, you found this ticket 2 days ago." "Yes," she nodded. But I frowned, my brain working sluggishly. "Wait, you said you checked the numbers. You went to the lawyer. You knew about this yesterday." "Yes." "So?" I paused, trying to align the timeline. "When you texted the group chat asking for $200 for your heart medicine that was 3 weeks ago, you didn't know then." "No," Ellie said. "I did not know then. I really was broke. Zoe, I really was terrified." "Okay," I exhaled. "Okay, that makes sense." I thought. "But," she interrupted, and her voice dropped an octave. It became cold, distinct, and terrifyingly lucid. "I knew about this ticket yesterday morning. I knew I was a multimillionaire at 10 o'clock in the morning yesterday." I stared at her. "Okay. And do you know what I did after I left the lawyer's office?" she asked. I shook my head. I called your mother, Ellie said. I called Diane, yesterday afternoon, after I signed the papers, after I knew I never had to worry about a bill again as long as I lived. You told her? I gasped. No, Ellie said. She picked up a cookie, but she did not eat it. She crumbled it between her fingers, watching the crumbs fall onto the pristine tablecloth. I did not tell her. I called her and I said, Diane, the electric bill is due, and I am short $50. Could you please spare $50 so I do not have to ask Zoe again? I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandma, why would you do that? Ellie looked up, and the look in her eyes was devastating. It was not anger. It was a profound, bottomless sorrow that had hardened into diamond. She sighed, Ellie said. She sighed so loud I could hear it through the phone, and she said, Mom, we talked about this. You have to learn to live within your means. I cannot keep bailing you out. Ask Zoe if she can pick up an extra shift. And then she hung up. The room was silent. The only sound was the rain lashing against the window pane. I had $300 million in my pocket, Ellie whispered, and she would not give me $50 to keep the lights on. I understood then. I understood the dress. I understood the tea. I understood the strange vibration in her voice. It was a test, I said. No, Ellie corrected me, her eyes locking onto mine. The first time, 3 weeks ago, that was real life. That was me begging. But yesterday was the audit. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. I needed to know. Zoe, I needed to know who was family when there was nothing to gain. I needed to know who would sit in the dark with me, and who would only show up for the champagne. She gestured to the letter on the floor. If Diane had said yes, if she had sent that $50, I would have given her half. I would have paid off her mortgage, bought her that vacation home she talks about, given Marla the money for her renovations. I would have shared it all. But she didn't, I said. She didn't, Ellie confirmed. She failed. They all failed, except you. She leaned back, her face relaxing for the first time, a strange peace settling over her features. So now, she said, picking up her teacup again, we have a decision to make. We have a lot of money, and we have a family that thinks I am a destitute burden who needs to be put in a state home. She took a sip of tea, her eyes twinkling with a dangerous light. I think it is time we taught them a lesson about value. Don't you? I looked at the woman sitting across from me. She was no longer the fragile grandmother I had protected with my last $500. She was a titan. She was a force of nature. And she was holding the ultimate trump card. What do you want to do? I asked, feeling a slow, wicked grin spreading across my own face. I want to disappear, she said. For a little while, I want to live like a human being, and then I want to see their faces when they find out that the burden is worth more than their entire lives combined. She picked up the checkbook that was sitting under the cookies. She opened it and wrote something quickly. She tore out the check and slid it to me. I looked at it. Pay to the order of Zoe Cooper. Amount $1 million. Memo for the medicine. That is just the down payment, she said. Cash it tomorrow. Quit your job. Pack a bag. We have work to do. I looked at the check. I looked at the rain. I looked at my grandmother, who had just turned the world upside down. Okay, I said. Where are we going? Anywhere we want, she replied. As long as there is no reception for the hive. The check for $1 million sat on the table between us. A slip of paper that weighed less than a feather but held enough gravity to crush the entire neighborhood. The rain continued to hammer against the roof, but inside the living room, the air had gone completely still. I looked at my grandmother. She was running her finger along the rim of her teacup, her eyes focused on the dark liquid as if reading tea leaves. There was something in her posture that suggested she had not finished unloading her burden. The confession about the lottery ticket was the explosion, but I sensed the fallout was about to be even more damaging. Grandma, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You said you found the ticket 2 days ago, but the date on the trust formation I just noticed it. It is dated 3 weeks ago. Ellie stopped tracing the cup. She looked up at me, and her expression was stripped of all the soft, apologetic grandmotherly warmth I was used to. In its place was the sharp, flinty look of a woman who had survived 78 years of disappointment and had finally decided to stop making excuses for it. I lied. Zoe, she said. Her voice was clear, devoid of tremors. I did not find the ticket 2 days ago. I found it 4 weeks ago. I verified the numbers the next morning. I met with Mr. Holloway. the attorney. 3 days after that. My mind reeled backward, rewinding the events of the last month. I felt a flush of confusion, followed by a sharp prick of betrayal. Wait, I stammered. If you knew 4 weeks ago, that means when you sent that text to the family group chat asking for medicine money, you were already a multimillionaire. Yes, she said. You had $333 million to your name, and you asked them for $200. Yes, I sat back, stunned. Why would you make yourself look so desperate when you were safe? I panicked. Grandma, I spent my rent money because I thought you were going to die. I know, she said, and for a moment, her face softened. And I am sorry for the fear I caused you. But Zoe, you have to understand, I needed a baseline. I needed a control group. She stood up and walked to the window, peering out through the blinds at the wet, dark street. When Mr. Holloway told me how much money it was, the first thing he said was, Eleanor, everyone you have ever met is about to become your best friend. People who haven't spoken to you in 20 years will suddenly remember they love you. He told me horror stories about lottery winners being sued by their own children, being guilt-tripped, being drained dry. She turned back to me. I sat in his office, and I thought about Diane. I thought about Marla. I thought about how they forget my birthday unless Facebook reminds them. And I wondered if I told them I won. Would they love me? Or would they just love the lifestyle I could give them? So you tested them, I said. The medicine text was the test, she confirmed. It was the perfect test because it was so small. If I had asked for a loan for a new roof, they could have said they didn't have $5,000. That is a reasonable excuse. But $200 for heart medicine. She walked back to the table and picked up the printout of the group chat I had shown her weeks ago, the one with Marla's comment about her being at that age. I chose a sum that was negligible to them, Ellie said, her voice hardening. $200 is what Marla spends on a haircut. It is what Cole spends on a weekend of drinks. It was an amount so small that refusing it wasn't about ability. It was about willingness. I wanted to see if they would step over a puddle to save me. I didn't ask them to swim an ocean. And they didn't, I whispered. They didn't even get their feet wet. No, she said. They gave me advice. They gave me judgment. Marla asked if I really needed to stay alive. That was her contribution. She looked at me, and her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set like granite. I needed to know who was still human. Zoe. That is the truth. I needed to know who saw me as a person, and who saw me as an expired appliance that was costing too much electricity to keep running. I felt the tears prick my own eyes. It was a brutal realization. She had laid a trap, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for clarity, and my family, my mother, my aunt, my cousins had walked right into it with their eyes open. They had failed, not because the test was hard, but because they simply did not care enough to pass. And I passed, I said, my voice thick. You didn't just pass, Ellie said. You saved me. You didn't ask questions. You didn't give me a lecture on budgeting. You just showed up with the pills. You showed up with the groceries. You paid the bills. You proved that you are the only one who sees Eleanor, not just Grandma the burden. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That is why you are the only one sitting at this table tonight. I wiped my face. I felt a strange mixture of pain and relief. For years, I had thought I was the crazy one. I thought maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was demanding too much from them. But I wasn't. They really were that cold. I wasn't imagining the neglect. It was quantifiable. It was $200 worth of neglect. So what now? I asked. Do we tell them? Not yet, Ellie said, a gleam returning to her eye. Mr. Holloway is very smart. He specializes in what they call elder law. He warned me that when the family finds out, they will try to say, I am senile. They will try to say, I was mentally incompetent when I made decisions about the money. They might even try to get conservatorship over me to control the funds. I gasped. They wouldn't. Marla asked about a state home, Zoe, Ellie reminded me. Of course they would. She reached into the large envelope again and pulled out a digital voice recorder. It was small, black, and blinking a tiny red light. That is why I have been recording, she said. Every phone call, every interaction. And Mr. Holloway has it all documented. He has an affidavit from my doctor stating I am of sound mind. He has the receipts of you paying my bills while they did nothing. He has the screenshots of the group chat. We are building a fortress. Zoe, by the time they realize there is a war, I will have already won. You are incredible, I breathed. I had never admired anyone more than I admired her in that moment. I am just tired of being a doormat, she said. Now, here is the plan. Mr. Holloway has set up a trust for you. It is irrevocable. That means no matter what happens to me, no matter how much Diane screams or Marla sues, that money is yours. You will never have to worry about rent again. You will never have to eat oatmeal because you are broke. And the rest? I asked. I am starting a foundation, Ellie said, her voice ringing with purpose. The Eleanor Briggs Foundation. It is going to support grandparents who are raising their grandchildren because the parents are absent or unfit. It is going to pay for legal fees, medical bills, and housing. I am going to make sure that no other grandmother has to choose between her heart medication and her dignity. It was perfect. It was poetic. It was exactly who she was. But first, she said, leaning in, we need to disappear. I cannot be here when the news breaks. The Lottery Commission will announce the winner in 48 hours. It is public record. Once my name is out there, this lawn will be full of reporters and long-lost cousins. Where do we go? I asked. I have booked us 2 tickets to Barcelona, she said casually, as if she were discussing a trip to the grocery store. First class, we leave tomorrow night, then Switzerland. I hear the air is very good for the heart in the Alps. Tomorrow. I looked at the check, then at my phone. I had a job, I had a lease, I had a life. But then I thought about North Shore Creative Lab. I thought about spinning lies for corporate clients. I thought about the internship I was supervising. None of it mattered. None of it was real. This woman sitting across from me, this justice, this love, this was real. Okay, I said. I will quit in the morning. Good, Ellie said. But Zoe, promise me one thing. Anything. We do not tell them we are leaving, she said. We do not say goodbye. We just go. Let them call the empty house. Let them text the number that goes to voicemail. Let them feel, for just a few days, exactly what I felt for 20 years, the silence. They will be furious, I said. They will say we abandoned them. Let them, Ellie said, standing up and smoothing her blue dress. They will find out the truth soon enough. But they are not going to find out because we were polite enough to tell them. They are going to find out the hard way. She walked to the window and pulled the blind down tight, shutting out the world. They will know, she said, turning off the living room lamp, plunging us into the soft shadows. But not in the way they want. They want a check. What they are going to get is a mirror. The morning after the revelation, I woke up expecting the world to look different. It did. But not because the sky had changed color or the laws of physics had shifted. It looked different because for the first time in 12 years, I was not waking up to the crushing weight of negative net worth. I rolled over and checked my phone. There were 5 notification emails from my student loan provider, my credit card company, and the bank that held the loan for my used Honda. I opened them, my heart doing a strange, fluttering dance in my chest. Payment received, balance 0. Payment received, balance 0. Account closed, paid in full. Ellie had not just handed me a check and told me to figure it out. While I was sleeping, she had instructed Mr. Holloway to electronically obliterate every single debt attached to my social security number. She had done it directly. There was no large transfer of cash into my account that would trigger questions from the family or the IRS. It was a surgical strike against my poverty. I walked into the kitchen. Ellie was there, dressed in a sharp beige trench coat, drinking coffee. She looked 10 years younger. The hunch in her shoulders, the one born from carrying the invisible weight of apology, was gone. Good morning, she said, sliding a plate of toast toward me. Eat up. We have an appointment at 9 o'clock. With the lawyer? I asked, looking at my phone again, just to make sure the zeros were still there. Yes, we are building the moat before we lower the drawbridge, she said. The office of Holloway and Partners was a fortress of mahogany and silence in the financial district. Mr. Holloway was a man who looked like he was carved out of expensive soap smooth, clean, and vaguely intimidating. He did not treat Ellie like a confused old woman. He treated her like the CEO of a multinational corporation. Zoe, Mr. Holloway said, sliding a thick document across the polished table. Your grandmother has instructed us to establish the Zoe Cooper Irrevocable Trust. The initial funding is $10 million. I choked on my water. 10 million? It is structured to protect you, he continued, ignoring my gasp. You will receive a monthly stipend that is generous enough to live anywhere in the world. But the principal is locked. We have included a specific anti-coercion clause. If you suddenly request a large lump sum, say, because a family member is pressuring you, the trustee, which is our firm, has the legal obligation to deny the request. You cannot give this money away even if you want to. I looked at Ellie. You think they will come after me? I think they will try to guilt you, she said calmly. They will say I am senile and you are manipulating me. They will try to get you to sign things. This protects you. You can just tell them. Sorry that the mean lawyer won't let me access the money. It gives you an excuse to say no. Smart, I said. Terrifyingly smart. Next item, Holloway said. The Eleanor Briggs Foundation. This was the part that made my throat tight. Ellie was putting $50 million into a charitable trust. The mission statement was simple and devastating: to provide legal defense, medical gap funding, and emergency housing for elderly individuals who were being financially exploited or neglected by their families. I want a specific grant, Ellie told the lawyer. Leaning forward. For heart medication, no senior citizen in this state should have to cut a pill in half because their daughter needs a new patio. Holloway took notes. Done. We can have the framework set up by the end of the week. Then, the mood in the room shifted. Holloway took off his glasses and looked at Ellie with a serious expression. Eleanor, before you leave for the airport, there is one more thing. My paralegals were doing the standard due diligence on your previous legal exposure, just to make sure there are no outstanding liens. And, Ellie asked, we found a record of an inquiry made to Dr. Evans' office 2 months ago, and a consultation with a probate attorney in the suburbs. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What kind of inquiry? Someone claiming to be your daughter attempted to access your medical records, Holloway said. Specifically, they were looking for a diagnosis of dementia or cognitive decline. They were blocked because of HIPAA laws. But they tried hard. They yelled at the receptionist. I looked at Ellie. She did not look surprised. She looked validated. They were building a case, Ellie said, her voice like ice. They wanted to prove I was incompetent so they could put me in the home against my will. That is why Cole found that facility. They needed a medical reason to force me in. And the probate attorney, I asked. They wanted to know the procedure for obtaining involuntary guardianship, Holloway confirmed. It seems they were preparing to take control of your assets, which, at the time, was just the house and the pension. They wanted to sell the house to pay for the nursing home. I felt sick. It was one thing to be neglectful. It was another to be predatory. They were actively plotting to strip her of her freedom before she even won a dime. Change everything, Ellie said. She did not hesitate. New locks on the house, today, alarm system, and I want to execute a new power of attorney right now. You, Mr. Holloway, and Zoe, no one else. If I end up in a hospital, Diane is not allowed past the front desk. Drafting it now, Holloway said. We signed the papers with a fury. Every signature felt like a door slamming in their faces. When we walked out of that office, we were no longer just a grandmother and granddaughter on a trip. We were a sovereign nation with closed borders. The flight to Barcelona was a blur of hot towels and reclining seats. I had never flown first class. I had never flown anywhere that did not involve a budget airline and a layover in a grim domestic terminal, but as I sipped champagne at 30,000 feet, watching Ellie watch a movie on her personal screen, I realized the luxury was not the point. The point was the exhale. For the first time in years, she was not calculating. She was just existing. Barcelona was a fever dream of color. We stayed in a hotel that used to be a palace. We ate dinner at midnight. We walked down Las Ramblas, and when Ellie saw a silk scarf she liked, she just bought it. She did not look for the price tag. She did not ask if it was on sale. She handed over her black card and kept walking. It is strange, she said to me on our third day, as we sat on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, eating paella that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. What is, I asked, the money? It does not feel like it changed me. I am still the same person who likes her tea hot and her feet warm, but it changed the air around me. It is like I can finally breathe. She looked at the ocean. Money just clarifies what is already there. Zoe, if you are a greedy person, it makes you a monster. If you are a free person, it gives you wings. And if you are my family, well, it reveals that you were never really family at all. We moved on to Switzerland after 5 days. The air in the Alps was crisp and thin, smelling of pine and snow. We checked into a wellness resort that sat on the edge of a glass-like lake. It was quiet. It was the complete opposite of the chaos we had left behind. It was there, in the quiet, that I made the mistake. Or maybe it was not a mistake. Maybe it was a subconscious desire to light the fuse. I was sitting on the balcony of our suite, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, watching the sun hit the peaks of the mountains. I looked happy. My skin was clear. The dark circles under my eyes were gone. I took a selfie. I did not tag the location. I did not show the expensive room service cart. I did not show the jewelry. It was just my face, smiling against a backdrop of undeniable, expensive serenity. I posted it to Instagram with a simple caption, "Peace." I thought it was safe. I thought it was vague enough. I was wrong. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started vibrating continuously, dancing across the glass table like an angry insect. I picked it up. Notification from Diane. "Where are you?" "Is that snow?" Notification from Marla. "Why aren't you at work?" Notification from Cole. "Dude, that looks like the Alps." "Did you win a contest?" And then, the one that stopped my heart, comment from a random user on my photo. "Wait, is that the Hotel Royal in Lucerne? I just saw a woman who looks exactly like your grandmother in the lobby. Isn't she supposed to be broke?" I looked at Ellie. She was reading a book, perfectly calm. "Grandma," I said, "I think I tripped the wire." She looked up. "Did you?" I posted a photo. Someone recognized the hotel. "The family is blowing up my phone." Ellie closed her book. She did not look panicked. She looked satisfied. She took a sip of her mineral water and looked at the mountains. "Good," she said. "Good?" I asked. "They are going to figure it out. They are going to trace the flights. They are going to call the neighbors." "Let them," she said. "We have the trust. We have the foundation. We have the recordings. We are untouchable." She stood up and walked to the railing of the balcony. "Do not answer them, Zoe. Let them wonder. Let them panic. Let them think about every time they ignored my calls. Let them realize that while they were plotting to lock me away, I was buying my freedom." I looked at the notifications stacking up on my screen. Diane called me immediately. "I am worried about Mom. Is she with you?" "She says she is worried," I said, reading the text aloud. "She is not worried about me," Ellie said, turning back with a sad, knowing smile. "She is worried that her plan to control me has failed. She is sensing a shift in power, and she hates it." The sun dipped below the mountains, casting long purple shadows across the lake. "When they find out the truth," Ellie said softly, "and they will find out soon, they are going to come running. They are going to cry. They are going to say they are sorry." "Do you think they will mean it?" I asked. Ellie shook her head. "No, they will not be sorry that they were cruel. They will not be sorry that they left me to beg for medicine. They will be sorry because they were caught. They will be sorry because they realized they bet on the wrong horse." She turned off the lights in the suite, leaving us in the twilight. "Turn off your phone. Zoe, let's order fondue. The show is about to start, and I want to enjoy my dinner before we have to deal with the audience." I powered down my phone. The screen went black, silencing the frantic buzz of a family that was just beginning to realize they had lost something they never knew they had. We were thousands of miles away, protected by millions of dollars and layers of steel-clad law. But the real distance wasn't geographical. The real distance was the $200 they wouldn't spend, and the $1 million she had just given me without blinking. The trap was sprung. Now, we just had to watch it close. Turning my phone back on was like opening the door to a blast furnace. I had expected anger. I had expected confusion. I had not expected the sheer, unadulterated panic that erupted from the device the moment it connected to the Swiss cellular network. It was not a trickle of messages. It was a digital assault. The phone vibrated so violently in my hand I almost dropped it. The screen became a blur of names: Diane, Marla, Cole, Uncle Jerry, Cousin Sarah scrolling past faster than I could read. 74 missed calls, 112 text messages, 18 voicemails. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the pristine silence of the Alps outside the window standing in stark contrast to the cacophony in my palm. Ellie was across the room, packing her suitcase with a calm, rhythmic precision. She knew what was coming. She had predicted it. I opened the first message from my mother. "Diane, it had been sent at 3 a.m. Our time. Zoe. Pick up the phone. The neighbors say Mom's house is dark. The mail is piling up. Where is she? If you have taken her somewhere without telling us, that is kidnapping, then." 10 minutes later. "We saw the Instagram post. What are you doing in Switzerland?" How did you pay for that? Is Mom with you? Call me immediately, or I'm calling the police. Then, an hour later, the tone shifted from concern to accusation. This was after the news must have broken locally, or perhaps Mr. Holloway had leaked a confirmation of the win to the press as part of the strategy. The news is saying the winner of the Powerball is from our county. Zoe, tell me right now, did Mom win? Is that why you are acting so weird? You need to answer me. This is a family matter. You cannot handle this alone. I scrolled down to Aunt Marla's contribution. Her messages were less frantic and more legalistic. Zoe, we are very concerned that you are taking advantage of Mom's confusion. Taking her out of the country when she is in frail health is elder abuse. We are consulting a lawyer to ensure her assets are protected from manipulation. Do not sign anything. Do not let her sign anything. Assets, I said aloud, reading the word with a bitter taste in my mouth. 3 weeks ago, her assets were a problem. Now they are a priority. Ellie folded a silk scarf and placed it into her bag. Read me Coles, she said, not looking up. I found the thread with my cousin. Yo, Zoe. Serious question. Did Grandma actually win $300 million? If she did, tell her I have that business plan for the crypto startup ready. Also, Mom is freaking out. She says you brainwashed her. Just giving you a heads up. He wants to pitch you a crypto startup, I said. Ellie laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. Of course he does. And Marla? She thinks I am abusing you. She says I am manipulating a confused old woman. I am sure she does, Ellie said. It is easier to believe I am senile than to believe I am independent. The phone buzzed again in my hand. It was a group message to the Hive. Diane had added me back in. Apparently, my exile was over now that I was the gatekeeper to the vault. Diane, everyone, listen. Marla and I are driving to Mom's house. We need to convene a family meeting. We need to be there when they get back. We need to present a united front to protect Mom from outside influences. Outside influences. That was me. The granddaughter who bought the heart medication. I felt a surge of rage so hot it made my vision blur. I typed a reply into the group chat. My fingers hit the glass screen with force. Zoe. You are worried about her assets. That is funny. When she needed $200 for heart medication 3 weeks ago, nobody was worried. You told her to cut the pills in half. You sent her a budgeting app. Where was the united front when she was freezing because she was afraid to turn on the heat? I hit send. The response was immediate. It was as if they were all staring at their screens, waiting for a sign of life. Diane Zoe. That is unfair. You are twisting things. We were trying to teach her independence. We didn't know the situation was that bad. You are being dramatic. Marla, we were acting out of love. Tough love is still love, and that does not give you the right to run off with her and her money. That money belongs to the family legacy. Legacy, I read aloud to Ellie. Marla says the money belongs to the family legacy. Ellie stopped packing. She walked over to me and took the phone from my hand. She looked at the screen, reading the stream of excuses and justifications. She did not look angry. She looked resigned, like a teacher realizing the entire class had failed the final exam. She typed a message herself. She did not sign it Mom or Grandma. She just typed, I asked for help to stay alive. You told me I was a burden. You told me to budget better. I followed your advice. I budgeted. I hired a lawyer. And now I am solvent. I do not need a meeting. I needed a family. I didn't have one then, and I certainly do not have one now that I am wealthy. She sent it. For a full minute, the group chat was silent. The 3 dots that indicated typing appeared and disappeared for Diane, then for Marla, then for Uncle Jerry. They were struggling to spin this. They were trying to find an angle where they were the victims. Finally, the pivot happened. It was synchronized, as if they had rehearsed it. Diane. Mom. Oh my God. You are reading this. We were so worried. There has been a huge misunderstanding. We never meant you were a burden. We were just stressed. Please, let us explain. We just want to make sure you are safe. Marla Mom. Please come home. Zoe is putting things in your head. We love you. We have always loved you. Let's all sit down and talk about the future. We can get you the best care possible. We can get you a private nurse. A private nurse, Ellie mused. 3 weeks ago, Cole suggested a state dormitory. Then, my personal messages pinged. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. Hi, Zoe. This is Cousin Brenda. I know we haven't talked since Christmas 5 years ago, but I am watching the group chat explode, and I thought you should know something. Brenda was the black sheep of the extended family, a woman who had divorced 3 times and was generally shunned by Marla and Diane for being trashy. Brenda, be careful with Marla. 2 months ago, she called me asking for the number of my friend who works in probate court. She asked specifically about the process for involuntary guardianship. She said Grandma was losing her marbles, and they needed to take control of the house before she did something stupid. She wasn't worried about Grandma. She was worried Grandma would reverse mortgage the house and leave them nothing. I stared at the screen. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Grandma," I said, my voice shaking. "You were right. It wasn't just neglect. It was a conspiracy." I showed her Brenda's text. Ellie read it. Her face did not change, but her eyes went very dark. "Involuntary guardianship," she whispered. "They wanted to lock me up. They wanted to take my rights away, not because I was sick, but because they wanted the house. The house was worth maybe $300,000 on a good day. They were willing to strip their mother of her freedom for a split of $300,000. They are at the house right now," I said, checking the group chat again. "Diane just posted that they are in the driveway. They can't get in because you changed the locks, but they are camping out. They say they aren't leaving until we come back." Ellie stood up straight. She buttoned her trench coat. "Well," she said, "if they want a meeting, let's give them a meeting." "You want to go back?" I asked. "We could stay here. We could go to Fiji. We never have to see them again." "No," Ellie said firmly. "If I run, they will say I am weak. They will say I am afraid. I want to look them in the eye. I want them to smell the money and know they can't touch it. I want to see Marla's face when she realizes that the confused old woman has a better lawyer than she does." She picked up her purse. "Book the flight. Zoe, we are going home. But call Mr. Holloway first. Tell him to meet us there, and tell him to bring the security team." The flight back took 9 hours. We did not sleep. We spent the time reviewing the trust documents, rehearsing our lines. Ellie was not acting like a lottery winner. She was acting like a general preparing for a court-martial. We landed, took the private car Holloway had arranged, and drove toward the old neighborhood. It was strange to be back in the familiar, potholed streets after the pristine perfection of Switzerland. As we turned the corner onto Elm Street, I saw it. It looked like a block party. Diane's silver Lexus was parked on the lawn, literally on the grass that Ellie had tended for 40 years. Marla's massive SUV was blocking the driveway. Uncle Jerry's pickup truck was on the sidewalk. There were other cars I didn't recognize, cousins, second cousins, people who hadn't visited in a decade. They were leaning against their cars, holding coffee cups, talking in huddled groups. They had turned my grandmother's home into a staging ground for their greed. "Look at them," Ellie said from the back seat, her voice dripping with disdain. "They didn't come when I had the flu. They didn't come when the basement flooded. But they are here now. They look like vultures," I said. "Vultures have a purpose," Ellie corrected. "These people are just parasites." Our driver, a large man with a thick neck named Frank, slowed the black Lincoln Navigator to a crawl. The crowd on the lawn turned. They saw the expensive car. They saw the tinted windows. They knew. I saw Diane wave. She was smiling a wide, frantic, terrifying smile. She started walking toward the car before we even stopped. Marla was right behind her, fixing her hair. "Are you ready?" I asked Ellie. She put on her sunglasses, even though it was overcast. "I have $333 million, a team of lawyers, and the truth," she said. "I have never been more ready in my life." The car stopped. The locks clicked open, and as the door swung out, I saw the hunger in their eyes. They weren't looking at Ellie. They were looking at the golden ticket. They were about to find out that the ticket had already been punched, and the ride they were waiting for had left the station without them. The moment we stepped across the threshold of the house, the atmosphere changed. Outside, the air had been filled with the nervous energy of the gathered neighbors and the humid warmth of the afternoon. Inside, the air was conditioned, stale, and thick with a predatory silence. My grandmother's living room, usually a sanctuary of soft knitted blankets and the smell of chamomile, had been transformed into a courtroom. My mother, Diane, and Aunt Marla had rearranged the furniture. They had pulled the dining table into the center of the room, pushing the sofa back against the wall. Seated around the table were the key players of the inner circle: Diane, Marla, Uncle Jerry, and a man I recognized as the family accountant, a nervous-looking guy named Steve, who usually only showed up at tax time. On the table, there were no teacups. There were stacks of paper. I saw printouts of tax codes, brochures for high net worth asset management, and what looked like a generic will template downloaded from the internet. They were not here to welcome us home. They were here to process us. "Mom," Diane said, standing up. She smoothed her skirt, her face arranging itself into a mask of deep, pained concern. "Thank God you are safe. We have been out of our minds with worry." "You look well, Mom," Marla added, her eyes scanning Ellie's new trench coat and the silk scarf from Barcelona. "Traveling at your age, it is risky. You really should have consulted Dr. Evans first." Ellie did not hug them. She did not smile. She walked past Diane's outstretched arms and sat at the head of the table, in the spot where she usually sat to clip coupons. She gestured for me to sit on her right. "I am fine," Ellie said. Her voice was calm, but it had a new weight to it. "Sit down, Diane, Marla. Let's hear what this is about." The family exchanged glances. They had expected a confused old woman, perhaps apologetic for running away. They were not prepared for the CEO who had just walked in. Diane took the lead. She clasped her hands on the table, leaning forward with that earnest kindergarten teacher expression she used when she wanted to manipulate someone. "Mom, we know about the lottery. The news is everywhere. $333 million. It is a terrifying amount of money." "It is certainly a lot of zeros," Ellie agreed. "Exactly." Diane nodded vigorously. "And look, we know you mean well. We know you want to be generous. But money like that brings sharks. It brings scammers. And frankly, it brings immense legal liability." She looked at me, her eyes hardening. "And Zoe, well, we love Zoe, but she is young. She is a copywriter. She has never managed anything more complex than a credit card bill. Leaving her in charge of your affairs during a trip like this, it was reckless. We are just glad nothing happened." "We have been talking," Marla interjected, sliding a thick binder across the table. "We have put together a comprehensive management plan. A family trust. Managed by a board, me, Diane, Jerry, and Steve here. We will handle the taxes, the investments, the charitable giving. We will make sure you are comfortable. Mom, you won't have to lift a finger. We will give you an allowance. Of course, a very generous one, so you can enjoy your golden years without the stress of administration." "An allowance," Ellie repeated. "Of my own money. It is for your protection." Uncle Jerry grunted. "You do not want to be taken advantage of." I watched them. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They were framing their coup as a rescue mission. They were trying to take the reins not because they wanted the money, oh no, that would be gauche, but because they wanted to protect the legacy. "And Zoe," Diane added, turning to me with a pitying smile, "we know you have debts. We can help with those. We can set you up with a financial advisor so you do not blow through whatever Mom gave you. It is important you learn responsibility." I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "I appreciate the concern," Ellie said. She reached into her bag. "But before we go any further, I think we need a second opinion." She pulled out her iPad, propped it up on the table, and tapped the screen. "What is this?" Marla asked, frowning. "I am inviting my counsel to join the meeting," Ellie said. The screen flickered to life, and the sharp, high-definition face of Mr. Holloway filled the display. He was sitting in his office, backed by a wall of law books, looking every inch the legal shark Diane had just warned us about. "Good afternoon, Eleanor," Holloway's voice boomed from the speakers, cutting through the room like a knife. "Is this the family?" The room went silent. Steve the accountant looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Diane went pale. "Who is this?" Marla demanded. "Mom, this is a private family discussion. We do not need strangers involved." "Mr. Holloway is not a stranger," Ellie said. "He is the head of the firm representing the trust that now holds the winning ticket. Anything you have to say to me, you say to him." Diane recovered first. She laughed, a nervous, trilling sound. "Oh, Mom. Really, a lawyer?" "We are your children. We are not suing you. We are trying to help." "Help," Holloway repeated. "Interesting word. My client has instructed me to listen to your proposals regarding her assets. Please, proceed." The dynamic in the room shifted instantly. The Protective Family Act crumbled, replaced by a desperate need to regain control. Marla reached into her oversized designer bag. "Fine. If we are being formal, let's be formal. Mom, look, we know you are overwhelmed. We know your memory hasn't been great lately. We just want to make this easy for you." She pulled out a single document. It was not a binder. It was a crisp, 3-page legal form. This is a durable power of attorney, Marla said, sliding it toward Ellie, bypassing the iPad. It just authorizes me and Diane to sign documents on your behalf, for the taxes, for the estate planning. It saves you from having to read thousands of pages of boring legal jargon. Just sign this, and we can handle the heavy lifting. You can go back to gardening. You can go back to your life. I looked at the document. It was standard, but lethal. It was the convenience trap. Stop, Holloway's voice barked from the iPad. Eleanor, do not touch that pen. I wasn't going to, Ellie said. She looked at the paper. Marla, does this document give you control over my medical decisions as well? Marla hesitated. Well, yes, it is standard. In case fall or something, we need to be able to help. And does it give you the power to liquidate assets to pay for my care? Ellie asked. Of course, Marla said, her voice tight. Mom, why are you being so suspicious? We are your daughters. I decided it was time. I stood up. You are not suspicious because you are paranoid. Grandma, I said. You are suspicious because you have a memory. I pulled my phone out and connected it to the large television screen mounted on the wall, the one Graham had bought for watching football. What are you doing? Diane snapped. Just providing some context for Mr. Holloway, I said. I swiped the screen. The text message from 3 weeks ago appeared, blown up to 60 inches of high-definition humiliation. It was the screenshot of Marla's message in the group chat. Marla. At that age, does she really need to be on that many medications? It seems like we are just prolonging the inevitable at a high cost. The room froze. Marla's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the screen, then at Ellie, then at the lawyer. That was out of context, Marla stammered. We were discussing generic brands. We were discussing the efficacy of the treatment. No, I said, my voice steady. You were discussing the return on investment of my grandmother's life. You decided she wasn't worth $200 a month, and now you want her to sign a document giving you control over $300 million. I swiped again. This time it was Cole's message about the state facility. Efficient. Take the pressure off. And this, I pointed to the screen, you want to put her in a home to take the pressure off. If she signs that power of attorney, how long until she is in Shady Acres and you are living in a mansion bought with her money? Diane stood up, her face red. Zoe, you are manipulating this. You are poisoning her against us because you want the money for yourself. You are a thief. Sit down, Diane, Ellie said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. And for the first time in her life, Diane sat. Ellie looked at them. She looked at the paper Marla wanted her to sign. She looked at the management plan binder. You know, Ellie said softly, I listened to you all, for years. I listened when you said I was too needy. I listened when you said I should downsize. I thought maybe I was the problem. I thought maybe I hadn't raised you right. She picked up the power of attorney document and slowly, deliberately, tore it in half. But I realized something in Switzerland, she continued. You didn't fail me because you were poor. You didn't refuse to help me because you didn't have the money. You failed because you are cold. You are emotionally bankrupt. Mom, please, Jerry tried to intervene. That is harsh. Life is harsh, Jerry, Ellie said. Poverty is harsh, but let's test this. Let's test your love. She reached into her own bag and pulled out a plain piece of notebook paper. She placed it in the center of the table. I am not going to sign your papers, she said, but I want you to write something for me. If you truly want to be my caregivers, if you truly want to be involved in my life, prove it. Prove it how? Diane asked, eyeing the paper warily. Write down a commitment, Ellie said. Not a financial management plan, a care plan. I want you to commit, in writing, to 20 hours a week of personal care, cooking meals, driving me to appointments, sitting with me when I'm lonely, cleaning the house, not hiring someone. I want you to commit to doing exactly what Zoe did for free when I was broke. She leaned forward. If you sign that commitment, I will fire Mr. Holloway. I will let you manage the trust. But if you miss 1 hour, if you skip one visit, the money goes to charity, all of it. The silence that followed was different from before. It was the silence of calculation. I watched their faces. Diane was doing the math. 20 hours a week, that would interfere with her Pilates. That would interfere with her book club. Marla looked horrified. The idea of scrubbing a toilet or cooking a meal was alien to her. Jerry looked at his shoes. Mom, Diane started. her voice whining. That is unreasonable. We have jobs. We have lives. We can hire the best people in the world to do that for you. Why would you want us to scrub floors when we can pay a maid? It doesn't make sense. It makes sense if the goal is connection, Ellie said. But that is not your goal, is it? We have responsibilities, Marla snapped, her mask slipping. You can't expect us to drop everything just to hold your hand. That is selfish. Zoe did it, Ellie said. Zoe has no life, Marla shouted, pointing at me. Zoe is a loser with a dead-end job. Of course she had time. We are successful people. And there it is, I said quietly. Ellie smiled. It was a sad, final smile. Thank you, Marla, Ellie said. That was the confirmation I needed. She looked at the notebook paper. It was still blank. Not one of them had reached for a pen. Not one of them had offered even an hour. They wanted the $300 million, but they wouldn't trade a single afternoon of their successful lives for it. You can't do the work, Ellie said. So you don't get the job. She turned to the screen. Mr. Holloway, you can disconnect now. I think we are done with the negotiations. Understood. Eleanor, Holloway said. The screen went black. Diane looked around, realizing the ground was crumbling beneath her. Mom, wait. Don't be rash. We can work something out. Maybe 5 hours a week. We can start there. It is too late for bargaining. Diane, Ellie said. The market has closed. She stood up. The family remained seated, paralyzed by the enormity of what they had just thrown away. They were looking at the torn power of attorney document as if it were a winning lottery ticket they had accidentally washed in the laundry. I want you all to stay seated, Ellie said, her voice ringing with authority. Do not leave this house yet. Why? Jerry asked, looking defeated. You clearly hate us. Why do you want us here? Ellie walked to the door, then turned back, her hand on the light switch. Because the show isn't over, she said. I have one more announcement, and since you are all so concerned about my legacy, I think you deserve to hear exactly where it is going. She looked at me. Zoe, bring the box from the car. I nodded. I knew what was in the box. It was the final nail in the coffin of their expectations. It was the proof that while they were playing checkers, Ellie had been playing three-dimensional chess. This, Ellie said to the room, is going to hurt. I placed the heavy cardboard box on the table. It made a flat thud that sounded like a gavel striking a block. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the same refrigerator where, just a month ago, there had been nothing but half a jar of pickles and expired milk. What is this? Diane asked, staring at the box as if it might contain a bomb. In a way, she was right. This, Ellie said, remaining standing, is the result of the audit. She tapped the iPad screen again. Mr. Holloway reappeared. His face was grave, his background blurred, but his voice was crisp, filling the living room with the terrifying authority of the law. Before we proceed to the distribution of assets, Holloway said, looking directly into the camera lens, I need to make a formal declaration for the record. This meeting is being recorded. I, Arthur Holloway, certify that my client, Eleanor Briggs, has undergone 3 separate independent psychiatric evaluations over the last 14 days. She has been declared fully competent, of sound mind, and free from any external duress or undue influence. Any attempt to contest her decisions based on a claim of incapacity will be met with a countersuit for malicious litigation and a filing for sanctions. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle on Marla's shoulders. Furthermore, Holloway continued, the trust documents we have executed contain a no contest clause. If any beneficiary attempts to challenge the validity of the will or the trust in court, they are automatically disinherited from any portion they were set to receive. Do I make myself clear? Crystal, Ellie said. She didn't look at the screen. She looked at her children. Good, she said. Now, I want to read you something, not a legal document, a history. She opened the first folder from the box. It wasn't a will. It was a bound transcript of the family group chat. The Hive, going back 5 years. She put on her reading glasses. The movement was slow, deliberate. She looked like a schoolteacher preparing to read a story to a class of unruly toddlers. October 12th, Ellie read, her voice steady. I sent a message. My heating bill is high this month. Can anyone spare $50 until the pension comes? She looked up at Uncle Jerry. Jerry? You replied, Mom, you have to stop asking. It makes things awkward. Maybe wear a sweater. Jerry turned a deep, beet red. He opened his mouth to speak, but Ellie cut him off by turning the page. November 4th, she continued. I sent a picture of the leak in the roof. Diane, you replied, I can't deal with this right now. I am at a spa weekend. Call a handyman. When I said I couldn't afford a handyman, you sent an emoji, a sad face emoji. Mom, stop, Diane whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Please. I am not done, Ellie said, her voice sharpening. 3 weeks ago, the day of the test, Marla, here is your contribution. She read the words that had burned themselves into my memory. At that age, does she really need to be on that many medications? It seems like we are just prolonging the inevitable at a high cost. Ellie took off her glasses and placed them on the table. She looked Marla dead in the eye. Prolonging the inevitable, Ellie repeated. That is what you called my life, an expense report that needed to be trimmed. I didn't mean it like that, Marla shrieked, her composure shattering. I was stressed. I was thinking about the quality of life. You are twisting everything. I am reading your words, Ellie said. I am not interpreting them. I am quoting them. Diane burst into loud, heaving sobs. She reached across the table, trying to grab Ellie's hand, but Ellie pulled back. Mom, if I had known, Diane wailed. If I had known you had the money, if I had known you were testing us, I would have acted differently, I swear. The room went dead silent. Ellie looked at her daughter with a mixture of pity and disgust. I know you would have, Diane, Ellie said softly. That is the tragedy. You would have been the most attentive daughter in the world if you knew I was worth $300 million. You would have brought me soup. You would have driven me to the doctor. You would have called me every day. She leaned in close. You are kind when it is profitable, but love is what you do when there is no profit. Love is what you do when it costs you. She poisoned you, Marla suddenly shouted, jumping to her feet and pointing a trembling finger at me. It is her Zoe. She has been whispering in your ear. She brainwashed you. She is a manipulator. She probably intercepted our messages. She is a snake. Ms. Briggs? Holloway's voice thundered from the iPad, louder than I had ever heard it. I am warning you right now. You are accusing my client, Ms. Cooper, of coercion and fraud. Those are actionable torts. If you say one more word defaming her character without evidence, I will file a slander suit against you personally before the sun goes down. Sit down. Marla froze. She looked at the screen, then at me. I didn't flinch. I stood next to my grandmother, my hands clasped behind my back, watching her unravel. Sit down, Marla, Ellie said. We are at the end. She reached into the box and pulled out 5 envelopes. They were thin, white, standard business envelopes. I have made my decision regarding the estate, Ellie announced. Zoe is the primary beneficiary of the Eleanor Briggs Trust. She will receive the bulk of the liquid assets, the real estate portfolio we are building, and control over the family archives. What? Cole gasped from the corner where he had been sulking. She gets everything. She gets what she earned, Ellie said. She invested everything she had in me. Now I am returning the investment. She slid the white envelopes across the table. One for Diane, one for Marla, one for Jerry, one for Cole, one for the twins. However, Ellie said, I did not forget you. I know you care about legacy. I know you care about fairness. So, I have left you each a specific inheritance. Diane tore open her envelope with trembling fingers. She pulled out a check. She stared at it. Her eyes bulged. $1, she choked out. $1, Ellie confirmed. And a letter? Diane pulled out the folded letter behind the check. It was a single page. Stapled to it was a photocopy of the text message where she said she had blocked Grandma. The letter explains exactly why you are receiving this amount, Ellie said. It details the dates, the times, and the messages where you refuse to help me. I have instructed Mr. Holloway to keep a copy of these letters on file. If you ever try to tell the press that I was a cruel mother, he will release these letters to the public. The world will know exactly why you got $1. This is insane, Jerry shouted, throwing his check on the floor. You can't do this. We are your blood. Blood is biology, Ellie said, repeating the words she had told me years ago in the backyard. Family is behavior. And the rest? Marla hissed, clutching her $1 check like it was a grenade. You have $300 million. You can't give it all to Zoe. That is too much for one person. Where is the rest? Ellie smiled. This was the moment she had been waiting for. You are right, she said. It is too much for one person. Zoe doesn't want it all. So, we established the Eleanor Briggs Foundation. She pulled a glossy brochure from the box and tossed it into the center of the table. The foundation has an endowment of $200 million, Ellie declared. Its mission is to provide emergency financial assistance to elderly Americans who are at risk of medical neglect. She paused, letting the irony soak into the carpet. Specifically, she added, her voice hard as steel, the bylaws state that the funds are to be used for seniors whose families have refused to assist them with the cost of life-saving medication. Every time the foundation cuts a check for someone's heart pills, the letter accompanying it will say, "This grant is made in honor of the family of Eleanor Briggs, who taught her the value of $200. You are mocking us, Diane whispered, her face pale. You are using $200 million to humiliate us forever. I am using the money to make sure no one else has to feel the way you made me feel." Ellie corrected. It is not fair, Cole yelled, stepping forward. Grandma, come on. I have student loans. I have a future. You are giving money to strangers instead of your own grandson. How is that fair? Ellie stood up. She slammed her hand down on the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Fair, she shouted. The power in her voice made Cole stumble back. You want to talk about fair? Fair is a two-way street. Cole, fair is reciprocity. She looked around the room, her gaze searing into each of them. I asked for $200, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. $200 to keep my heart beating. That is all I asked. If any of you had given it to me, you would be sitting on a yacht right now. I would have given you the world. She waited. So tell me, she demanded. When I asked for $200, who gave it to me? Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Diane looked at the floor. Marla looked at the wall. Jerry looked at his hands. Nobody, Ellie answered herself. Nobody but Zoe, so do not talk to me about fairness. You got exactly what you paid for. You invested zero. You got zero. She pointed to the door. Get out. Mom, Diane started. Get out, Ellie roared. Get out of my house. Get off my lawn. Take your cars. Take your $1 checks. And go. If you are not off this property in 5 minutes, Mr. Holloway will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. And don't think I won't do it. I have a very expensive security team waiting down the street who would love to escort you out. Let's go, Marla muttered, grabbing her bag. She looked at Ellie one last time, her eyes full of venom. You are going to die alone, old woman. I would rather die alone, Ellie said, than live with vultures. They filed out. It was a procession of defeat. Diane was sobbing loudly. Jerry was cursing under his breath. Cole looked like he was in shock. Marla walked with her head high, but I saw her hand shaking as she gripped the door frame. I walked to the door and watched them go. They got into their cars, the Lexus, the SUV, the pickup truck. The engines roared to life. They didn't look back. They just drove away, leaving tire marks on the wet pavement. I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. I engaged the new security chain. The silence that rushed back into the house wasn't the heavy, lonely silence of before. It was a clean silence. It was the silence of a storm that had finally blown itself out. Ellie was standing by the table, her hands resting on the box of receipts, her shoulders slumped. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her looking small again, but not weak. Never again weak. Are you okay? I asked, walking over to her. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the air of her own home. She looked around the room, at the old photos, the worn carpet, the life she had fought so hard to keep. I am tired, Zoe, she said softly. I know, I said. It is over. It is, she nodded. She looked at me, and a genuine smile broke through the exhaustion. For 20 years, I smiled when I wanted to scream. I said, it is okay. When it hurt, I pretended I didn't see them rolling their eyes. She exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to carry decades of weight out of her body. Finally, she whispered. Finally, I don't have to act fine anymore. I can just be. You are free, I said. We are free, she corrected. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was warm. Her pulse was steady thanks to the medicine, and thanks to the fire that had reignited in her soul. You know, she said, looking at the door where they had just exited. They called me a burden for so long. I almost started to believe it. I squeezed her hand. I looked at this woman who had outsmarted them all, who had turned her pain into a fortress and her love into a legacy. Grandma, I said, my voice thick with emotion, you are not a burden. You never were. I looked at the empty chairs where the successful family members had sat, exposed and small. You are the standard, I said. And they just couldn't measure up. Ellie smiled. A true, peaceful smile. She turned off the overhead light, leaving us in the warm glow of the kitchen lamp. Come on, she said. Let's make pancakes. I think we can afford the good maple syrup now. The house was quiet. But for the first time, it wasn't empty. It was full. Thank you so much for listening to Zoe and Grandma Ellie's story of justice and redemption. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment below with your city or country. Let's see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed seeing the greedy family get what they deserved, please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help us share this story with even more people. Your support means the world to us.